Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more Esoterica. Today we're diving back into the works of Mr. Aleister Crowley. This is Liber 4. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material and the link from my book where I teach you to do magic responsibly, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, we are going to dive in and continue our exploration of Liber 4 with Part 2, Chapter 7, The Cup. We may only get through one chapter today. It is long. It's like 6 pages. And the next one is 5 pages. We might get through both of them. It depends on how the text goes. As the magic wand is the will, the wisdom, the word of the magician, so is the magic cup, his understanding. This is the cup of which it was written, Father, if it be thy will, let this cup pass from me. And again, can ye drink of the cup that I drink of? And it is also the cup in the hand of Our Lady Babylon, and the cup of the sacrament. This is telling you something right here, and you should pay attention to it. Right? Now, if you are unaware, I have several contentions with the Holy Bible. There is a whole Bible study that is linked in the corner above, where there are 161 videos of me reading through it, plus one extra video of me explaining why the Bible cannot be the authority for anything. So I do not come at this from the position of the Bible is the authority. But Aleister has set himself in opposition to the things that are outlined in the Bible because he is in rebellion to the things that were in the Bible. That is the entirety of his life summarized, right? You can fall back and watch the 2.5-hour video where we did his background, but that is the summary. He was rebelling his entire life and not very effectively at that. This statement right here, it is the cup in the hand of Our Lady Babylon, is claiming something for himself. That is claiming the woman that rides the beast of Revelation for himself. It is Our Lady Babylon. Babylon is the vices personified, right? We're not talking about a city here. We're talking about what the city was supposed to represent, and it was lasciviousness. It was sexual promiscuity. It was stealing and lying and killing and all of those things that Jerusalem was supposed to be set in opposition to. He is directly claiming the dark forces into his life, and while that is not a surprise, you should pay attention when these things pop up from people who call themselves leaders, from people who are attempting to teach other people. He has already let us know that he is not aligned for the betterment of humankind several times in here, and this is another one of those iterations. There is no part of you that should be claiming Babylon. Babylon is the personification of the overuse of all the vices. That is intrinsically an evil thing, right? And that is not necessarily to assign evil to him. He is aligning himself with something that is intrinsically evil. Absolutely set in opposition to the betterment of humankind. And if you choose to follow someone who does that, that is up to you. Right? You do have the ability to make decisions in this, your experience, but you will not be aligned with me if you choose to follow Mr. Crowley. The cup is full of bitterness and of blood and of intoxication, and that is exactly the same as let this cup pass from me, right? Because the cup that he was begging to be taken away from him, that is another thing that cannot be stressed enough, right? If you are of the belief that Jesus came here specifically for and with the knowledge of taking the sins of man away from being the sacrifice therefore, this sentence right here in the Bible is a direct contradiction to your beliefs. He was convinced that he was on a holy mission. That is true. He was convinced that he was doing the will of God. That is true. But that was not the redemptive Savior thing if you actually read what he said, right? He continuously pointed the way to the Father, not to himself. right? Other people pointed to him, and he kind of accepted that a little bit towards the end of his life. But in Gethsemane, he was absolutely opposed to the end of this particular plan. So much so that he wept tears of blood trying to avoid it. He went 3 separate times to try to pray it away, and this is part of that. Right? This was him attempting to let the cup of suffering and iniquity pass away from him. He didn't want the responsibility for it. That is evident from the text, right? And so if you believe that he was predestined to save all of humanity and he knew that, you have a very hard time explaining this particular phrase, this particular, not even just this phrase, but this whole section, right? The entire Garden of Gethsemane was him attempting to avoid the fate that he knew was his. Now, I firmly believe that he was trying to do away with the blood sacrifice entirely, and then they decided to kill him, and then later, many years later, possibly up to 150, more probably 100, but up to 150 years later, other people decided that he was taking away the sins of mankind. Right? That is evident from the text. You should read the text if you were going to believe these things. And so this cup is not the same cup as the cup of the whore of Babylon. It is not. It is not even close to the same thing, and this is a fundamental misunderstanding of what that is. And also, right, this "can you drink of the cup that I drink of" is not even talking about this cup. This cup is full of bitterness, of blood, and of intoxication. And you should not be bitter, you should not be using blood, and you should not be intoxicated while doing magic at all. The understanding of the Magus is his link with the invisible on the passive side. His will errs actively by opposing itself to the universal will. His understanding errs passively when it receives influence from that which is not the ultimate truth. In the beginning, the cup of the student is almost empty, and even such truth as he receives may leak away and be lost. They say that the Venetians make glasses which changed color if poison was put into them. Of such a glass, the student must the student make his cup. As far as I am aware, this is not a thing that is possible. Right? There is substances that you can use to test to see if there is poison contained within a liquid. That is a true thing. And I guess that if you coated the cup with it, that it would do so. But that's probably a bad idea. Most of them are not as necessarily good for your health either. And so I don't believe that this thing was a possible. That's not to say that it is impossible. There are many things that are possible that I am unaware of. But I am unaware, right? If we had a cup that would do this, date rape using those various things would not be a thing, right? We do have straws that you can stick in there that will change color. That is a thing that we do have now. But as far as I am aware, we do not have glass that will do so. Very little experience on the mystic path will show him that all of the impressions he receives, none is true. Either they are false in themselves, or they are wrongly interpreted in his mind. There is one truth, and only one. All other thoughts are false, and bear in mind that Mr. Crowley did not have the truth. As he advances in the knowledge of his mind, he will come to understand that its whole structure is so faulty that it is quite incapable, even in its most exalted moods, of truth. He will recognize that any thought merely establishes a relation between the ego and the non-ego. Kant has shown that even the laws of nature are but conditions of thought, and as the current of thought is the blood of the mind, it is said that the magic cup is filled with the blood of the saints. All thought must be offered up as a sacrifice. The current of thought is the blood of the mind. That is making assumptions that are not necessarily true. Right? There is a current in your mind. There is electrical discharges that happen. It is my understanding of that it is the Holy Spirit that makes the actual energy happen, the electrical impulses when you make a decision, and it goes through your nerve system to the various points that you are trying to do something with. That is the Holy Spirit in motion. You are both at the same time within this body and not, right? You as a soul are not the body. The body is the vessel by which you navigate 5D space. The spirit is what allows that to happen, but you as the soul are making the decisions. And so while you are in this body, you are not the body. And so you are making decisions for this body, but the spirit enables those decisions to come out. And at no point of that is it blood filled up a cup, right? Now, if you are imagining a cup, then do you, boo, but I will not. All thought must be offered up as a sacrifice, however, is close to the truth, right? If you are going into meditation, then you are not thinking. There is a difference between prayer and meditation. Prayer is the active side of it. Meditation is the inactive side of it. And if you are going into meditation, then all of your thought must be offered up as a sacrifice. The cup can hardly be described as a weapon. It is round like the pentacle, not straight like the wand and the dagger. Reception, not projection, for its nature. Footnote: as the magician is in the position of God towards the spirit that he evokes, he stands in the circle and the spirit in the triangle. So the magician is in the triangle with respect to his own God. This is one of those things that is completely unnecessary for anything, right? We talked about the ceremonies, how none of them are a necessity. You should not be evoking any spirit other than the Holy Spirit. And if you are free to do so, but you will probably feel some repercussions from that. So, that which is round is to him a symbol of the influence from the higher. The circle symbolizes the infinite, as every cross or dial represents the finite. That which is four square shows the finite fixed into itself, and for this reason the altar is four square. It is a solid basis from which all the operations proceed. One form of the magical cup has a sphere beneath the bowl, and it is supported on a conical base. Footnote: an ugly form. A better is given in the illustration. This cup, crescent sphere comb, represents the three principles of sun, moon, and fire. The three principles which, according to the Hindus, have course in the body. Footnote: these principles are seen by the pupil when he first succeeds in stilling his mind. That one which happens to be in course at the moment is the one seen by him. This is so marvelous an experience for even one who has pushed astral visions to a very high point that he may mistake them for the end. See the chapter on dhyana. And this is one of those things that I have to say no to, right? I have had revelatory experiences of a spiritual nature. I was taken out of my body. I was shown the creation and the way that everything interacts with itself. There was no point in time where I saw the representation of a crescent sphere or a cone. I didn't even see necessarily in emphasis the moon or the sun or fire. Now, fire is the element which creates all of the others, allows things to happen. The formation of the compounds and the molecules that we have in everyday life are created by the fire, the spirit. The moon would be the soul and the sun would be the body in this particular instance, as this is the Trinity. But really the sun and fire represent the same thing, so this is not a Trinity. The moon is a reflection of the sun. It represents the feminine side of things. The sun represents the masculine side of things. And the fire can be seen as the sun, right, if you're personifying things. But again, the sun and fire are pretty tightly linked, and so they are intrinsic to each other. The Hebrew letters corresponding to these principles are Gimel, Resh, and Shin, and the word formed by them means a flower and also expelled, cast forth. This is the cup of purification, as Zoroaster says. So therefore, first the priest who governeth the works of fire must sprinkle with the lustral water of the loud resounding sea. What? So therefore, first, the priest who governs the work of fire must sprinkle the water of the sea, right? That is not the same thing as what you are talking about here. Like, this is bringing in a reference, and yes, this can be the opening of a ceremony, right? But it is not the sun, the moon, and the fire. This is not the cup of purification. It is the sea that purifies the world. And the great sea is in the Kabbalah a name of Bina, understanding. It is by the understanding of the Megas that his work is purified. And see, I'm going to go with no on this too, right? It is not water that purifies, it is fire that purifies. Every single instance, you can make the argument that acid maybe, or a base maybe, but that's not water, it's just a liquid. And so, the sea purifying the world is really not going to do it for me. It's really not. Like, I was thinking as I was reading, I was like, well, hurricanes are like vacuums to the ocean, right? Like, they pass over and they stir up shit on the bottom of the ocean. It doesn't matter how far down it is. That low pressure system causes an updraft. That's where the storm surge comes from. And it's pulling stuff up off the bottom. So it's stirring up and making things happen, right? And so you could look at that, but that's not caused by the water. That's caused by the air, which in turn is caused by heat disturbances, fire. And so even in that instance, it is not the sea that purifies the world. Even in that instance, right? There is, like, water can be a cleansing agent. Yes, that is true. But it is not the great purifier. The great purifier is fire. It is the thing that isolates the elements. Right? If you're purifying something, reducing the elements to their primal state is the ultimate form of purification, the return to pure spirit, and that is enabled by the fire as well. It's not enabled by water. And so that is just not true. Now, the great sea in the Kabbalah being the name of Bina, understanding, whatever. I don't deal with the Kabbalah in that way. We are doing an exploration. If you were unaware, I'm going to pitch it again. Right? We have the podcast. We've done the first episode Monday. We're doing the second episode Saturday, 12 Central Time, and we are discussing the Hebrew alphabet and the meanings behind the words. Right, we did father and son, we did teacher, we did learning, we're doing, and the next one is going to be mother and daughter, and I think we're going to get the altar in there, and then maybe the temple. There's a lot that goes into these words, and so the name of Bina, meaning understanding, is absolutely a thing, but that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have a greater significance in anything other than these people use this thing for their alphabet. Is there a story told by the Hebrew alphabet? It appears so. I am learning that as we go along, but whether that is a revelatory process for greater explanation of things remains to be seen, and I am open to it, but I'm not making, like we're doing a study here. I'm not doing this type of a study for the Kabbalah. We're going to talk to some people who practice that and get some understanding from them. Jason is the first in a series, hopefully, of people along that line. So if you're interested in that, the podcast is the place to find it. All right. It is by understanding of the Megas that his work is purified. Now that is true. Bina, moreover, is the moon. So it's the moon and it's the sea. Is that right? Okay. And the bowl of this cup is shaped like the moon. It's round. The bowl of the cup is shaped like the moon. The moon is not a semicircle. It is not a hemisphere. It is a whole sphere. This moon is the path of Gimel through which the influence of the crown descends upon the sun of Tifereth. And this is based upon the pyramid of fire, which symbolizes the aspiration of the student. In Hindu symbolism, the Amrita, or dew of immortality, footnote A, the privative particle marita, mortal. Dew of immortality drips constantly upon a man, but is burnt up by the gross fire of his appetites. Would that be purifying? Would that be purifying? Oh my goodness. Yogis attempt to catch and to preserve this dew by turning back the tongue in the mouth. Here is the thing. One of the things, there are several people who have reached out to me on this channel. Right? Jason, who is on the podcast, he is one of them. Chris, you're another one. And there are several other ones. One of them was this guy named Roman. He has a reaction channel, and there's been a little bit of a falling out, I think, between us because of some things that I might have said. But in an attempt to help me to heal my throat, he attempted to get me to do this, right? And there is a practice which the yogis use by which they take their tongue and they run it back behind the uvula and up into the sinus cavity. And there is this pearl, right? This dew of immortality which is supposed to be there. I do not know whether that is a thing. I'm not going to stick my tongue behind the uvula, but I did learn from this process that it is a possibility. I can do it. I don't have that little thing underneath your tongue that holds it in place. I forget what it's called, plenum or something like that. That's not quite right, but it's close. There's a tendon that's on your tongue, and some people cut that in order to be able to do this thing, right? You can fold your tongue back and touch your uvula. That is one of the ways that I tell you how to flex your third or your throat chakra, and that is how I learned about it. I was like, let me see if this is even a possibility for this thing that Roman has told me. And so I tried it, right? I reached back, and while I can do it, I'm not going to do that because it turns out that part is not necessary to it either. Now, you can get there through this. This is a thing that has been happening for a couple of thousand years, right? People have been following this practice of sticking the tongue behind the uvula into the sinus cavity. But the soft palate and the hard palate, if you don't know what that is, the palate is the roof of your mouth. Now, the hard palate is the part that it begins where your teeth are set into and extends back towards your throat. The soft palate extends from the back of your throat and it meets the hard palate in the roof of your mouth, probably about 3/4 of the way back, right in front of your uvula. If you take your tongue and you press against the point where the hard meets with the soft, there's an indentation right there. And if you can take your tongue and you can hold it in that place and run the energies, pull it through the chakras like we talk about in the book. If you run the energy through there with the tongue in that particular spot, it enables you to help open that third eye. But it also releases a substance. There is a slightly salty substance at first that will be released by this process over an extended amount of time. Then it can turn a little bit sweet, and that little bit of sweetness is exactly what they are looking for by sticking their tongue behind their uvula. I have done the same thing without having to risk the possibility of killing myself, which is a very real possibility for that particular practice. If you stick your tongue behind the uvula, there is a chance that you will not be able to get it back. That is a real thing. Do with that what you will. What they are talking about, preserving this dew by turning the tongue back into the mouth, is exactly what I just told you about. Right? And so, while the practice from the Hindus, as I understand it, is probably an effective way of doing so, you can also do so quite effectively without running the risk of killing yourself in that particular way. Do with that information what you will. Concerning the water in this cup, it may be said that just as the wand should be perfectly rigid, the ideal solid, so should the water be the ideal fluid. The wand is erect, it must extend to infinity. The surface of the water is flat and must extend to infinity. One is the line, the other the plane. The difference between the wand and the plane is a difference in dimensionality, right? And so, the wand is the straight line. The surface being flat would be 4 square in infinite directions. That would be the extension of the wand into movement using the logos, right? If you create the 2-dimensional line and you place it into motion, as we talk about in this book, I know I pitch it a lot, but a lot of this information that you're actually looking for if you're in this study is actually in my book. So this is a thing. This is the logos in motion. But the wand is weak without breadth, and so the water falls without depth. The understanding of the megas must include all things, and that understanding must be infinitely profound. H.G. Wells has said that every word of which a man is ignorant represents an idea of which he is ignorant. Yeah, and it is impossible perfectly to understand all things unless all things be first known. You will never have all knowledge. That is not a thing that you will have in the mortal coil. No matter how hard and diligent you work at it, there will always be something else to learn. That realization right there is a key to manifestation. Understanding is the structuralization of knowledge. That is true. You learn a lesson and you understand it, then you can rise to meet challenges. All impressions are disconnected, as the babe of the abyss is so terribly aware. And the master of the temple must sit for 106 seasons in the city of the pyramids, because this coordination is a tremendous task. There is nothing particularly occult in this doctrine concerning knowledge and understanding. A looking glass receives all impressions but coordinates none. The savage has none but the most simple association of ideas. That is an assumption that you make. Even the ordinary civilized man goes little further. All advance in thought is made by collecting the greatest possible number of facts, classifying them, and grouping them. The philologist, though perhaps he only speaks one language, has a much higher type of mind than the linguist who speaks 20. This tree of thought is exactly paralleled by the tree of nervous structure. Very many people go about nowadays who are exceedingly well informed, but who have not the slightest idea of the meaning of the facts that they know. They have not developed the necessary higher part of the brain. Induction is impossible to them. This capacity for storing away facts is compatible with actual imbecility. Some imbeciles have been able to store their memories with more knowledge than perhaps any sane man could hope to acquire. This is the great fault of modern education. A child is stuffed with facts and no attempt is made to explain their connection and bearing. The result is that even the facts themselves are soon forgotten. Any first-rate mind is insulted and irritated by such treatment, and any first-rate memory is in danger of being spoilt by it. No two ideas have any real meaning until they are harmonized in a third, and the operation is only perfect when these ideas are contradictory. This is the essence of Hegelian logic. No, sir. Okay, so you can have two ideas that are harmonized without a third. Harmony implies two voices. Now there can be more that comes in for harmony, but all that is necessary for harmony is deuce, baby. It is not trace. It is deuce. It is not trace. It is deuce. And so if there is if you go from the monad to the duad, you are already in it, right? Harmony is something that you set out to do by coming into accordance with someone else. So two ideas, right? Any single idea can have real meaning, regardless of whether it is harmonized by even a second one. So right on the face, this is not correct. Now, the revelation of further facts will reveal that this truth is more truth. And so that is always a good thing to get. You should always be learning more things. But the operation is only perfect when these ideas are contradictory. You should be looking at both sides of every object, right? That is close to the Hegelian dialectic, right? But the Hegelian logic is cause, reaction, or problem, reaction, solution, right? That is the trinity of the Hegelian dialectic, and we have dealt with a little bit of Hegel, right? We've done the science of logic, at least in part, and we have at least a little bit of knowledge that Mr. Crowley absolutely does not have. This is not the essence of the Hegelian logic. The magic cup, as was shown above, is also the flower. It is the lotus which opens to the sun and which collects the dew. That would be the mind's eye. That's the cup, by the way. The lotus is in the hands of the Isis, the Great Mother, and the symbol similar to the cup in the hand of Our Lady Babylon. And there it is again. The Great Mother and Our Lady Babylon? Yeah, okay. There are also lotuses in the human body according to the Hindu system of physiology referred to in the chapter on the Dharana. Footnote: these lotuses are all situated in the spinal column, which has 3 channels: Sushumna in the middle, Ida and Pingala on either side. Cf. the Tree of Life. The central channel is compressed at the base by Kundalini, the magical power, a sleeping serpent. Awaken her, she darts up the spine, and the prana flows through the Sushumna. See Raha Yoga for more details. Okay, couple of notes here. These lotuses are what I call chakras. You can look at them however you want. You can use whatever words you want. I use chakra. He's using lotus. Interchangeable. Absolutely. They are all situated on the spine. In the spinal column is a little bit wrong. That is mostly right. Right? Don't get that twisted. It aligns itself with the spinal column, and the first 6 are in the spinal column, right? You have the base, which is at the very bottom of the spinal column where it meets the rectum. It's halfway in and halfway out of your butthole. The next one is the sacral. It's in the regenerative parts, but it is also attached to the spinal column. You have the solar plexus, which is your stomach. It's also attached to the spinal column. The heart, same thing. The throat, same thing. The third eye rests at the very top of the spinal column. It is where the pineal gland is the center of it. So it's not actually attached to the spinal column, but it does touch it. And then the 7th one is the crown, and it is not connected to the spinal column at all, right? It is well above. They are all in a line. They do form the sword of creation. The cup that is being discussed is actually the third eye chakra. It is the point where that fluid I was talking about is released from. And so this is partially correct and partially incorrect. Now, by that I mean through my understanding. This may be a perfectly valid way of looking at it, but it's not quite right for me. In addition to that, there are 2 magical powers. There is not just one. The central channel is compressed at the base by Kundalini. That is a word that people use for this magical power. They see it as a sleeping serpent. That is fine. There is no problem with that alliteration. I don't have that particular thing that I keep in my mind, but you can. It does absolutely resemble the caduceus, right? There are 2 powers that do this. They alternate. They begin. One goes clockwise, one goes counterclockwise, up and down the spine. My understanding of this is that the one at the base is actually the feminine. That is true, but it is not white. It is black. The one at the top is masculine, and that one is white and not black. Now, they're somewhat interchangeable, but the way that I visualize them is, or visualize is a big word, right? The way that I conceptualize them is that's how it was revealed to me, right? This is the white penetrative energy coming from the top and the dark absorptive energy at the bottom. I don't know whether that is correct, but I do know that it is effective. Right? The things that I have done is directly related to that understanding of this. Using both sides of the magical powers is what has allowed me to heal myself. It is not just using one side of it, and if you do this, you are only using one side of it. That is probably why the results from people who do this are so unbalanced. And so, like, this does happen. There is channels, there are things. Whether it is restricted to 3 channels, I don't know. But there is the as below trinity, which is the base, the sacral, and the solar plexus. And there is the as above trinity, which is the crown, the third eye, and the throat. And they form together another trinity with the heart into the divine. And so that is 3, right? And so that can absolutely be 3 channels. 1 down, 1 up, 1 out. And so this in part at least is correct. Now, this darts up the spine, that is not taking into account the masculine, and that is going to be wrong, right? And I don't say that lightly. There is the lotus of 3 petals in the sacrum, in which the Kundalini lies asleep in. Actually, it's a little bit lower than the sacrum. This lotus is the receptacle of the reproductive force. That is true. Right? The base is your base existence. It is the first one that forms, and then it's your heart, and then it's your crown, and then you develop the other ones in between. That is the process of human evolution. The first thing that actually forms is your belly button, and then you get a butthole. Then you get the crown. That is literally how it works. There is also the six-petaled lotus opposite the navel, which receives the forces which nourish the body. Opposite the navel. What? I'm assuming that you're talking about the third eye, right? Opposite the navel. Actually, opposite the navel is going to be the throat, because the solar plexus and the throat are the opposites. There is also the lotus in the solar plexus, which receives the nervous forces. Yeah, see, this is a complete misunderstanding of everything. It doesn't begin in the sacral. That is the first one. It begins in the base. That is where you pull the energy from the negative, right? There you pull the energy from the positive with the crown through the divine. And so that is just completely not right. The lotus in the solar plexus, which receives the nervous forces? Huh? What are the nervous forces? Define those for me, because that would be electrical impulses, and while you do get gut feelings, you also get gut feelings in other parts, right? The heart in the throat. My heart is in my throat. That is a gut feeling. And so I don't know about that. The lotus in the chakra in the solar plexus receives the nervous forces. Like the solar plexus is the powerhouse. It is the part that converts your fuel into fuel, or your food into fuel. It literally manifests things. It allows the energy to flow. And so all of that can be considered nervous forces, right? If you consume through your throat the energy and it gets converted here, nervous force. And so I can't say that that one is necessarily wrong. The six-petaled lotus in the heart corresponds to Tiphereth and receives those vital forces which are connected with the blood. The 16-petaled lotus opposite the larynx receives nourishment needed by the breath. And it's actually rest inside of the larynx, right? That is the focal point. It is attached to the spine, but it is quite literally in the larynx. So it's not opposite the larynx. That is something that you are not correct in. The two-petaled lotus of the pineal gland receives the nourishment needed by thought, while above the junction of the cranial structures is that sublime lotus of 1,001 petals, which receives the influence from on high, and in which, in the adept, the awakened Kundalini takes her pleasure with the Lord of all. Okay, now this is again true. Now, this did not have the base whatsoever, but we did have the sacral, we have the solar plexus, we have the heart, we have the throat, and we have the third eye, and then we have the crown. So he's only missing the base and the divine in this explanation, but he is definitely missing those two. The two-petaled lotus of the pineal gland. Now, these numbers that he is attaching to it, they are arbitrary to me. They make no difference whatsoever. You can visualize them how you want. But he's got a six-petaled in the heart and in the navel. That makes no logical sense whatsoever. 3 petals in the sacrum and then 2 in the pineal. Again, makes no sense other than you are probably trying to make this fit some gematria bullshit. Right? That complicated math, completely unnecessary. 16 petals in the throat, but only 6 in the heart. Are you kidding me? No, it doesn't make any sense. The pineal gland receiving the nourishment needed by the thought. Kind of, yeah. That is where you visualize. It is hopes, dreams, and aspirations. It is where you set the direction of your manifestation. And so, kind of, right? That is in charge of thought. The cranial structures, right, we talked about right here. It is halfway in, it is halfway out. It is the size of your fist, if your fist was a perfect sphere. And it rests in the soft spot of your head, halfway in and halfway out. That is the crown, and it does indeed and receive the information from the divine. That is a true thing, but the base does too. the heart does as well, right? All of these things are somewhat fluid. There is an interchange that goes all the way around. And so, yeah. Now, this Kundalini takes her pleasure with the Lord of all. Yeah, if the Lord of all is that black power that I was talking about, that, or the white power that is coming in unto the black power. All these lotuses are figured by the magic cup. And the lotuses are actually better represented by the sword. Right? The sword of manifestation is the alignment of these chakras. The sword in the circle is the alignment of the chakras with the divine. Back to the text. In man, they are but partly opened or only open to their natural nourishment. In fact, it is better to think of them as closed, as secreting that nourishment which, because of the lack of the sun, turns to poison. The magic cup must have no lid, yet it must be kept veiled most carefully at all times, except when invocation of the highest is being made. This cup must also be hidden from the profane. The wand must be kept secret, lest the profane, fearing it, should succeed in breaking it. The cup, lest wishing to touch it, they should defile it. Yet the sprinkling of its water not only purifies the temple, but blesses them that are without. You can do that. All right? You have already done that with the oil. The oil is already consecrated and purified the temple. Why are you doing it again with water? That is unnecessary. That is repetition for repetition's sake. There is no need for that. Freely must it be poured. Let no one know your real purpose, and let no one know the secret of your strength. Remember Samson. Remember Guy Fawkes. Now, I'm only vaguely aware of this guy, right? But this guy, that didn't have anything to do with water, right? His power came from his belief in his hair. And so, let no one know the secret of your strength is if you let someone know how to defeat you, then they will. That's the lesson to take from the Samson and Delilah story, right? Don't trust a woman with your secrets. I'm joking. Right? Don't give away the secrets to your power to those who are uninitiated, to those who are seeking your detriment. That is a true thing. If you are on the path, not everybody needs to know that. Be the example, be the light, and if they inquire, if it is appropriate, then you can reveal that. But you don't need to run around screaming to the top of your lungs, hey, look, I'm manifesting things. And people will ask if you are doing it correctly. Of the methods of an increasing understanding, those of the Holy Kabbalah are perhaps the best, and remains to be seen, provided that the intellect is thoroughly awake to their absurdity and never allows itself to be convinced. Footnote, see the interlude following. Further meditation of certain sorts is useful, not the strict meditation which endeavors to still the mind, but such a meditation as samasati. Footnote, see Equinox 5, the training of the mind, Equinox 2, the psychology of hashish. We have already talked about that. And Equinox 7 and this Liber, whatever it is, that is what? 1,000? D is 1,000, or is that 50? It doesn't even matter. All of this is stupid, right? His numbering system is stupid. But the psychology of hashish, we talked about. I smoke cannabis, if you were unaware, right? I have done so for the last 15 years for pain management purposes. I am no longer in pain, so I cannot make that claim any longer. I have to admit that it is recreational these days, but for a long time it actually was medicinal. The use of cannabis absolutely does enhance your ability to feel the magical forces and to pull them, but you should not be doing so in the beginning at a minimum, right? You should be able to use these powers without the amplification that hashish or cannabis or any of the other substances might provide. You should be able to do so naturally before you attempt to do so with any of the tools. That is true for psychedelics as well as cannabis. Those doors can be opened without the need for the intervention. Now, as far as the recreational side of this goes, right, it is relaxing, it is fun, whatever. I've stated it before and I will say it again. If I know that I'm going to do meditation, I do not smoke before I meditate. I don't smoke before I do magical practices. If I'm going to be healing something, I don't smoke. And that is with the full knowledge that it works. It allows the energy to move better. That is from somebody who smokes a lot, right? I can piss green, right? Like, and despite that, I will not practice the magic while I am high. I won't do it. Not because it can be done, but because if you are in a state of alter, then you may not be able to control fully the way that you need to. You should be able to do these things without. You can use tools, but you don't really need them. The tools may even be detrimental. If you are using psychedelics, for instance, if you open that door, you might not be able to close it. You may not be prepared what's on the other side. As a matter of fact, you almost certainly are not prepared for what's on the other side of that door. There are entities, there are forces, there are powers that you do not yet know about. And if you open those doors, they can talk to you. People see them as mechanical elves, for instance, and then they do some pretty atrocious things. And if you don't believe that, look at the tribes that use ayahuasca pretty regularly and their practices. Not on the spiritual side, on the physical side. See the things that they do with their lives while they talk to these spirits. And then you can open those doors if you want to. I advise against it. On the exoteric side, if necessary, the mind should be trained by the study of any well-developed science such as chemistry or mathematics. That does help. Right? The greater understanding you have of anything allows greater understanding of everything. The more that you can understand about any one specific thing, the more that you can apply that to other things, even if it is not a direct one-to-one correlation. You can make allegories between these things, and therefore it is beneficial for you to know as much about everything as you can. Remember, I told you to keep that learner's mindset, to keep it in your mind that you should always be learning, and that would be beneficial in your magical practice. This is the exact same thing. The idea of organization is the first step, that of interpretation the second. The master of the temple, whose grade corresponds to Bina, is sworn to interpret every phenomenon as a particular dealing of God with his soul. But even the beginner may attempt this practice with advantage. Either a fact fits in or it does not. Yes. If it does not, harmony is broken, and as the universal harmony cannot be broken, the discord must be in the mind of the student, thus showing that he is not in tune with that universal choir. Let him then puzzle out first the great facts, then the little, until one summer when he is bald and lethargic after lunch, he understands and appreciates the existence of flies. This lack of understanding with which we all begin is so terrible, so pitiful. In this world, there is so much cruelty, so much waste, so much stupidity. The contemplation of the universe must at first be almost pure anguish. It is this fact which is responsible for most of the speculations of philosophy. And I do not agree with that. Right? Most people do, in fact, see this as a punishment. I do not. And we have stated many times that Mr. Crowley, man, I just lost his name. Mr. Crowley does not have an understanding of pretty much anything. He believes that you must hurt yourself in order to meditate. And so do not take anything that he says about anguish as something that is necessary at all. The contemplation of the universe must be at first almost pure anguish. Can be partially true because it is the suffering that makes you look for the meaning, and the meaning is what reveals to you that it is not truly suffering. And so that you do find it through the anguish, but it is not intrinsic that the anguish be there, right? It is just simply the way that it happens most often. It is possible to find this without anguish. And so, like, the sufferings of humanity is what leads us to the greater contemplations. And so this is in part truth. But, again, don't take anything that he says about pain and anguish as something to follow. Medieval philosophers went hopelessly astray because their theology necessitated the reference of all things to the standard of men's welfare. They even became stupid. Bernardin de Saint Pierre, was it not, said that the goodness of God was such that wherever men had built a great city, he had placed a river to assist them in conveying merchandise. But the truth is that in no way can we imagine the universe as devised. If horses were made for men to ride, were not men made for worms to eat? Okay, this is stupid. There is a cycle of life. That is a true thing, and yes, men were made for worms to eat. That is a real thing. Right? That is part of the decomposition process if we don't interfere with it by injecting all kinds of hazardous chemicals, and that makes the worms not want to eat it. Right? That fear of the worms eating the flesh is what made us develop formaldehyde and stuff, but you are meant to dissolve, right? You are not to be permanent. That is not a thing. The goodness of God was that wherever men had built a city, he placed a river is stupid, right? That is kind of what he is saying, but not in the right way, right? Men build cities next to rivers. God doesn't build rivers next to cities. That is something. I mean, now, the universe is not devised is also stupid. Right? We are forming our universe. We are literally manifesting our created reality every single day. The things that we say, the actions that we take, and yes, the thoughts that we have develop who we are and help create the world in which we live. We do help to determine which direction we are going. Therefore, it is at least a little bit devised, and I believe that the Supreme, the creator of all things, he devised it before we ever even thought about it. He already knows the direction that it can go. There are many directions that it can go, and he knows all of them. There is a greater explanation in my book about these particular things. It is about timelines. And so, this is in part kind of true again, right? He is blending truth with stupidity in remarkable ways. And this is just stupid logic, right? If horses were made for men to ride, were not men made for worms to eat? Is stupid. Like that is one of them asinine objections. Well, if God is so powerful, can he make a rock that he can't pick up? Yeah, he can, but why would he? I mean, it's stupid. It's pointless. Like, there are very few intellectual exercises that I would consider to be pointless. This is one of them, right? Well, if horses were made for men to ride, were not men made for worms to eat? Yes, you fucking were. And yes, horses were made so that men might ride them. There are other animals we might ride as well. We have horses. Some people ride bulls. Some people ride sheep. Hell, some people ride goats, although that's a ceremony that you don't want to take part in. But, like, this is just stupid. I don't know any other way to put it, right? Like when we talked about the cycle of life, there is a time when you can kill things, right? You are meant to eat meat. That involves killing some meat. You are meant to eat plants. That involves killing some plants. And so you are meant to kill some things in appropriate ways, but not in mean-spirited ways, not without a purpose, not even in war, really, right? Unless it is a justified defensive war, right? Wars of aggression are never justified. Going to take territory from somewhere else, not justified. But defending yourself, always justified. You are allowed to defend yourself, even taking someone else's life in the defense of your own. That is a thing that is allowed. It is part of the cycle of life. You have the right to defend yourself up to and including taking someone else's life in defense of your own. You are allowed to kill things to eat them. It is part of the cycle of life. Intrinsic even, right? A deer is made to live in the wilderness. It is meant to free and explore, but sooner or later it's going to wind up groceries for someone. If it is not you, it's a bear or a wolf or a dog or worms, right? Regardless, it's going to wind up in death. And if you are not killing it with no purpose or just to be mean or anything like that, right? If you are killing it for the purpose of eating it or using the pieces for production that is intrinsic to life, using the bones for tools, the skin for clothes, all of these things are perfectly fine. You are using them for purpose. And yes, that is part of the purpose they were created for. Part of the purpose you were created for is to feed the bacteria and the worms when you die. You're doing it right now. There is almost certainly a parasite within you, right? There are many of them that are beneficial. We have gut bacteria that break our food down every single day, and then there are some that are not so good, right? Cycle of life is intrinsically good, right? If you are not acting out of maliciousness or evilness or wastefulness, it is perfectly fine to do things. And yes, we are meant to be masters of the world. That's why we can think. It's why we're in 5D space. Go forth, conquer, subdue the earth, and be stewards thereof. Shed no blood of man. That is the whole of the law. And so, we find once more that the ego idea must be ruthlessly rooted out before the understanding can be attained. Wrong. Right? Now, that does not mean that you should be ego-centered when you're doing meditation, but you are you for a reason. There is an apparent contradiction between this attitude and that of the master of the temple. What can possibly be more selfish than this interpretation of everything as the dealing of God with the soul? But it is God who is all and not any part, and every dealing must thus be an expansion of the soul, a destruction of its separateness. Every ray of the sun expands the flower. The service of the water in the magic cup is infinite. There is no point different from any other point. Footnote: if ye confound the space marks, saying they are one, or saying they are many, then expect the direful judgments of Ra Horkuit, which, by the way, is his completely invented deity. Sick. Error of capitalization should be, if ye confound the space marks. This shall regenerate the world, and the little world my sister. These are the words of Nuit, Our Lady of the Stars, of whom Bina is but the troubled reflection. I would not call upon this name, seeing as how he refers to this as the same as the other. Thus, ultimately, as the mind is a binding and a limitation, so is the cup an expansion into the infinite. And this is the danger of the cup. It must necessarily be open to all, and yet if anything is put into it which is out of proportion, unbalanced, or impure, it takes hurt. And here again we find difficulty with our thoughts. The grossness and stupidity of simple impressions cloud the waters. Emotions trouble it. Perceptions are still far from the perfect purity of truth. They cause reflections, while the tendencies alter the refractive index and break up the light. Even consciousness itself is that which distinguishes between the lower and the higher, the waters which are below the firmament from the waters which are above the firmament. That appalling stage in the great curse of creation. And again, we see a problem with his mindset. This is not a curse. You are not cursed in creation. You are not being punished by being here. Since at the best, this water is but a reflection, how tremendously important it becomes that it should be still. Footnote: the water in this cup, the latter is also a heart, as shown by the transition from the ancient to modern tarot. The suit hearts in old packs of cards, and even in modern and Spanish Italian cards, it's called cups. It is the letter Mem, the Hebrew word for water, which has for its tarot trump the Hanged Man. I don't think so. The Hanged Man represents the adept hanging by one heel from a gallows, which is in the shape of the letter Deleth, the letter of the Empress. The heavenly Venus is the heavenly Venus in the tarot. His legs form a cross, his arms a triangle, as if by his equilibrium and self-sacrifice he were bringing the light down and establishing it even in the abyss. Elementary as this is, it is a very satisfactory hieroglyph of the great work, though the student is warned that the obvious sentimental interpretation will have to be discarded as soon as it has been understood. It is a very noble illusion, and therefore a very dangerous one, to figure oneself as the Redeemer. For all the illusions in this cup, the subtler and purer that they are, the more difficult they are to detect. If you are unaware, I am doing the tarot. I do a daily tarot read. It is part of the Exploring Tarot playlist. It has its own playlist. But in the Exploring Tarot playlist, the first 4 videos are an exploration of the tarot, much in the same way that we are doing here. At least for the first video. The next 3 are me explaining how the tarot actually works. The Hanged Man is about a change of perception. That is true. It is about seeking out a new viewpoint for things. He has willingly hung himself from the Tao, which is the letter T. It is not the Christian cross, by his foot. And yes, he is in an awkward position, but he placed himself there in order to receive illumination by seeing it from a different perspective. And that is what happened. It's not about feelings, right? Now, I'm not sure what the number is. I think that he is a 1, but I think that he is a 1 in the thoughts path, not the emotions path. And that's why I disagreed with that particular part of it. But if you would like greater illumination of the tarot, I definitely have something that can help you out. If the cup is shaken, the light will be broken up. Therefore, the cup is placed upon the altar, which is 4 square, will multiplied by will, the confirmation of the will in the magical oath, its fixation and law. It is easy to see when water is muddy, and easy to get rid of the mud, but there are many impurities which defy everything but distillation, and even some which must be fractionated unto 70 times 7. Fractionated is just the purification process of distillation. There is, however, a universal solvent and harmonizer, a certain dew which is so pure that a single drop of it cast into the water of the cup will, for the time being, bring all to perfection. This dew is called love. Even as in the case of human love, the whole universe appears perfect to the man who is under its control. So is it, and much more, with the divine love of which it is now spoken. For human love is an excitement, and not a stilling of the mind, and, as it is bound to the individual, only leads to greater trouble in the end. This divine love, on the contrary, is attached to no symbol. I want to make a point here, and this is completely off to the side for those of you who would be interested in this. I've been thinking about this universal solvent, and there is one thing that I can think that might be along that lines. Now, this is for organics. I don't know about the inorganics, but if you take honey and you place it upon something else, it will extract from that something else the pure elements thereof. I discovered this through the exploration of my tea that I make, right? If you're unaware of my tea, this is lemon, rosemary, thyme, cayenne, and cumin. And then I put honey on top of that. I squeeze the lemon in, I shake all of the other stuff in the appropriate measures into there, and then I coat the whole thing with honey. If you do the honey after the water, for instance, it has a different effect than putting it upon the raw elements. If you put just honey upon lemon, it changes everything about it. It extracts the primal elements from the lemon. The beneficial things are distilled, right? Now, that is not the complicated distillation of heat, but it does extract the essential oils, and it changes the chemical composition into something that is more beneficial. That is true for lemon, it is true for rosemary, it is true for thyme, it is true for cumin, cumin, and it is true for the cayenne. It is true for pretty much any organic. You can put honey on chicken and it changes the texture of the chicken. It will make it taste completely different. You can put it on beef, it does the same thing. In addition to that, it is one of the most perfect substances on the planet. You can take a jar of pure raw honey, seal it up, and it will be good in 10,000 years. It never decays unless you introduce something into it that is outside of purity, right? It is an amazing substance, and if there were to be a universal solvent, honey is a good, very good way to begin looking for it. Now, I am not an alchemist. That is something that I do plan on getting into at some point, but we have a lot of other studies going on. I'm hoping to start a full garden with all of the herbs this coming year. I kind of got sidetracked this year, but I am planning on doing an exploration of alchemy in the same way that we do other explorations. All right, back to the text, enough sidetrack. It abhors limitation either in its intensity or its scope, and this is the dew of the stars, of which it is spoken in the holy books. For Nuit, the Lady of the Stars, is called the continuous one of heaven, and it is that dew which bathes the body of the adept in a sweet-smelling perfume of sweat. Footnote, see Liber Legis, Equinox 7, sic, to quote correctly, bathing his whole body in a sweet-smelling perfume of sweat. Oh, Nuit, continuous one of heaven. Okay, so he's quoting himself. In this cup, therefore, though all things are placed by virtue of this dew, all lose their identity. And therefore this cup is in the hand of Babylon, the lady of the city of the pyramids, wherein no one can be distinguished from any other, wherein no one may sit until he has lost his name. To equate Babylon with the pyramids is a stretch. Of that cup which is in the cup, of that which is in the cup, it is also said that it is wine. This is the cup of intoxication. Intoxication means poisoning, and in particular refers to the poison in which arrows are dipped. Here the Greek letters Tau, Omicron, Z, Omicron, Nu, a bow. Think of the vision of the arrow in Liber 4:18, and look at the passages in the holy books which speak of the action of the Spirit under the figure of a deadly poison. For to each individual thing, attainment means first and foremost the destruction of the individuality. Each of our ideas must be made to give up the self to the beloved, that we may eventually give up the self to the beloved in our turn. It will be remembered in the history lection how the adepts who had with smiling faces abandoned their homes and their possessions could steady and calm and firm correctness abandon the great work itself, for this is the last and greatest projection of the alchemist. To abandon the great work is the last and greatest. Footnote, the book given to those who wish to become probationers of A Delta A Delta. The master of the temple has crossed the abyss, has entered the palace of the king's daughter. He has only to utter one word, and all is dissolved. But instead of that, he is found hidden in the earth, tending a garden. This mystery is all too complex to be elucidated in these fragments of impure thought. It is a suitable subject for meditation. And that is going to bring us to the end of the section on the cup. And hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult series of topics. I understand I have some unconventional beliefs, and I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, and I do not apologize for it. Once again, I don't feel like I need to go on here at the end about what we talked about. I feel like I've covered it fairly effectively. If you have questions, you are more than welcome to leave them down below. There is a good bit of good information, but it is hidden in a whole lot of really not good information. Once again, if you are using blood or pain, you are doing it wrong. And if you are subjecting yourself to the authority of the whore of Babylon, you are probably doing it wrong as well. But that's where we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment. Whether you agree or disagree, put it in the box down below. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership or picking up a copy of the book where I teach you to do magic responsibly. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.